Good evening. Can everyone hear me in the back? Okay, first the good news. The National Weather Service has upgraded the forecast. Originally it was going to be 5 degrees overnight, and now it's going to be 7 degrees overnight. Now that's a 40% improvement, so don't overlook it. Well, good evening. I'm Dave Wilson. I'm a member of the People for Effective Government. We really appreciate all of you who braved the weather tonight and the icy road conditions to get here. And we're hoping that a few more people will show. First, a very heartfelt thanks to Whitworth University for allowing us to use this wonderful facility. Isn't it beautiful? PEG, the People for Effective Government, or PEG, is a new nonprofit organization with shallow pockets. So we greatly appreciate Whitworth working with us to have such a fitting venue for our distinguished speaker. This event is sponsored by the Weyerhaeuser Center, and I also want to extend a special thanks to Dr. Dale Soden, a professor of history here at Whitworth, who made it possible for PEG to use this auditorium. And one more thing about Dr. Soden. PEG, this is our 13th public forum, and Dr. Soden was our first speaker back in April of 2018. So we really appreciate Dr. Soden's ongoing and continued support of our organization. So please join me in a round of applause for Dr. Soden. In a minute, I'm going to introduce the vice president of our organization, who will introduce our speaker. But first, I'd like to take just a minute to put in a plug for PEG. PEG is not only a nonprofit organization, but a Spokane-based nonpartisan coalition. PEG's mission is to support bipartisan approaches to governing, which are fiscally responsible and ensure an adequate social safety net and promote a civil society. The members of PEG are committed to changing the current political climate in which our two major political parties have become increasingly polarized. More specifically, we are committed to encouraging sincere and civil debate about the challenges that our nation faces and about effective solutions to those challenges. If you are interested in learning more about PEG and possibly becoming a member, please visit our website, which is pegnow.org, or talk with one of our members here tonight before you leave. And our members have the name badges on. We'd love to have you as a member or as a friend of PEG. And at a minimum, if you're not on our email list, please sign up for our email list. That's really the only surefire way that we get the word out on our forums. We ask for the newspapers to publish articles, but they don't always get them into the papers. So that's the best way to hear about PEG. So now I'd like to introduce the Vice President of PEG, who will introduce our speaker, Mrs. Ginny Darrell.
Thanks, Dave. Welcome to the first forum for PEG in 2020. It's a new year, and it's a new decade. I'm curious if any of you have not attended a PEG event before. Could you? Excellent. Welcome. It's good to have you here. Hope we'll see you at many more. Our speaker will talk for 40 to 45 minutes, and then he'll open it up to Q&A. Please hold your questions until the end of the talk. As you know, our speaker tonight is Chris Crutcher, author, retired child and family therapist. Mr. Crutcher has written 9 critically acclaimed novels, an autobiography, and 2 collections of short stories. Drawing on his experience as a family therapist and child protection specialist, he writes honestly about real issues facing teenagers: making it through school, competing in sports, handling rejection and failure, and dealing with parents. Chris Crutcher has won 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards for his body of work: the Margaret A. Edwards Award, the Allen Award, and the NCTE National Intellectual Freedom Award. He grew up in Cascade, Idaho, and graduated from Eastern Washington State College, which you know as EWU, with degrees in psychology and sociology, and got his teaching certificate there. During a 10-year period of teaching K through 12 alternative school students in California, he was deeply struck by their stories of bravery in survival situations. It was after returning to Washington that he began his writing career, turning these stories into lessons for others to hear and learn from. After his first book was completed, he joined the Spokane Child Protection Team and began practicing as a child and family therapist. He worked as a therapist and chairperson for the original Spokane Child Protective Team for over 32 years. He's also been a resource for schools that have been experiencing school shootings, including Freeman. He lives in Spokane. The topic of Chris's talk is Everyone Has a Story. He will discuss his experiences with children and families in crisis, with an emphasis on those situations leading to fractured family relationships that often result with kids on the street. He has some powerful messages to share. Buckle up. Please help me welcome Chris Crutcher.
I pretend I know what I'm going to say. 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, man, that's scary. I could go at any time. It's funny because when I hear that kind of overall description of kind of my career, and then I remember what I was actually doing during all those times, they don't match up quite like they should. When I went to Eastern, it was state college. I think there were probably 4,000 students there, and it was basically a war college. The biggest department on campus was ROTC, and I didn't know this before I went there. Believe me, I would have checked 1 or 2 other institutions, but there were 2 years required ROTC, and then you could decide whether to go to the advanced program and have your tuition paid for, and then go to Vietnam. Like I say, I didn't know about that part. So Eastern for me was an interesting stepping stone for me, because I look at politics now, and I look at the way I see politics. My dad was a B-17 bomber pilot in World War II. By the time he was the same age I was when I graduated from Eastern, he had flown 35 missions over Germany. And I think he flew 11 missions before he came back with all his engines. And he was like the rest of those World War II guys. He didn't talk about it very much. But when you did get him talking about it, you understood that he was a patriot. I mean, he was a patriot to the bone. And he was really well read. He was probably undereducated for his intelligence, but he had a year of college, I think, at the University of Idaho before he went to war. By the time he got out, he was ready to start a family and get going. And my mother was sure he was going to get killed in the war, so she had left her birth control on the bathroom shelf, and he had a son. And he came back, and he was, if you ran for anything from dog catcher to president of the United States in Valley County, Idaho, my old man was your campaign guy. And he was conservative, and he talked about being conservative. And he believed in a woman's right to choose. And he believed in absolute separation of church and state for the good of the state and for the good of the church. And if he were to, I go back and look at his politics now and look at what conservative. He was one of the first guys that let me understand that the word conservative and the word conservation came from the same root word. So I came up in a real different time, and there was dialogue, and it's almost impossible to go through the career that I've gone through without running through the political piece, without making it political. It's political because all of the things that I did in my lifetime to try to do something to help kids were underfunded, and they weren't understood. Now, a lot of the people in this room, if you're a guardian ad litem, or if you work in this world at all, you know my partner Carol Thomas. Carol Thomas has been working with traumatized kids, and I mean seriously traumatized kids, for 35 years. And when we started working together, when she was at the mental health center, we weren't partners at the time. She was working 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, and 10 hours on Friday because the center closed. And her specialty was 5 and unders who had been sexually mistreated. And she worked those hours and had a 6-month waiting list in a town of 250,000 people. Now, when you go back and look and say, now, not all of those, I mean, there are a whole lot of different kind of circumstances that you can get into to be in that position if you're a kid, but they're all bad. And when you consider that sexual abuse is underreported by more than 50%, and that she's not the only therapist in town, that's an epidemic. That's an epidemic. I mean, that's a startling thing to me, and it was then. And at the same time that was going on, I mean, this is the early '80s, and I had been working down in California because I'm the front end of the baby boomers. So I mean, you couldn't get a teaching job if I applied for a teaching job anywhere in the state of Washington. There were 25 other applicants, and 24 or 25 applicants total, and 24 of them were more qualified than I was. It was not easy to get a teaching job. But you go down to California, you couldn't open your car door without hitting somebody who was starting an alternative school. An alternative school in the 70s was like alternative to school. I mean, it was. You want to go here? Do you want to go to reform school? Oh, I'll try here and see how it goes. I mean, it was K through 12. And all of a sudden, I had grown up in lily white conservative Cascade, Idaho, and gone to lily white conservative Eastern Washington State College, and now I'm in Oakland, on the streets in Oakland, out of my element. And one of the things that I realized was that all of those things that I learned in school to get my teaching credential, they'd already been tried. They didn't work with kids who had been thrown out of school. And all of a sudden I realized that I had to start talking to the real experts to figure out how to teach these kids, because I mean, 3 years there I was a teacher, and then during the end of the year meeting after my 3rd year, the teachers meeting was a case of beer and who knows how many doobies out on the edge of the school. And I was drinking probably too many beers, and when I went to the restroom, when I came back, I was the director. Nobody wanted that job. I said, "Does it pay more?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Okay, I'll take it." So now I'm surrounded by kids it's K through 12, so it's like 4.5 years old to 19. And every kid there has a story. And I want to be a storyteller. I haven't written any stories at that point. I want to be a storyteller. But if I'm going to figure out anything that we're going to be able to do with these kids, I got to go to the experts, and the experts are the kids. And I mean, you sit down with a kid and say, "How the hell am I going to keep you in this school? Because if you can't stay, I failed and you failed. We got to figure something out." And they'd always give you some trick to keep them there. Because for so many of them, it was the first time they'd been seen. So I did that for about 10 years. And, you know, the 70s in the Bay Area, California, they say if you remember it, you weren't doing it right. I remember a little bit of it. And I came back up here because I was tired of the traffic. And I was looking around for another job, and I thought it was still hard to get a teaching job, and it really wasn't my best thing. I was a lot of fun, and I was good with the kids, but I was bad on content. if you're a psychology, sociology major, and you get a credential, a teaching credential, that makes you a social studies teacher. I didn't know that. I owe money back to the kids in Kennewick, down in Kamiakin, that I taught, particularly the ones I taught geography to. But they'll never find me because they took geography from me. But what I realized was that I had an affinity for kids who weren't making it. And there was a good reason that I had that affinity. But I cared more about what was going on in their lives. It was more important to me. I was more interested in what was going on in their lives than I was content. And that was too bad because that doesn't make a very good teacher. But I got back up here and they were just starting this amazing program at the Mental Health Center. And it was a wraparound program. We had therapy sessions 4 nights a week. 2 nights a week, the kids would go off and work on their trauma and problems, things like that. The parents would go off and work on anger management and couples work and all those kinds of things you need to do to be a different kind of parent. They were all people who were referred by CPS or the law. I mean, it was rugged stuff. And then 2 nights a week, we'd bring the families together. You got to see these families as from every possible viewpoint. And all of a sudden, I started to see heroes as a whole different thing, because there were adults who had done things so shameful. I would have run away. They decided they weren't going to do that. They were going to do whatever they had to do to get their kids back. And their kids, and some of them, some not. Their kids had come up with survival skills that were brilliant, that you never would have thought of unless you had to. And so my whole picture of what was going on in people's lives and what we could do about it changed. Now, this is early 80s, and in the early 80s to the mid 80s, these programs were really well funded. And we had this program, we had that program, and then we had the same style program out at Head Start. Because they called us up one day from Head Start and they said, we've got like 17 kids out here. They're in foster care, or they're about to go to foster care. They're just transitioning back. If you bring us a therapist out here to work with the parents, and we needed to have a child therapist out here, we can do the therapy piece and the education piece at the same time. Can't miss. Perfect. Supervisor called me up and said, you're going to be the person to go out and do the adults, and we got to find a good play therapist. Well, we went through about 3 or 4 play therapists, and play therapy wasn't very well organized in those days. There's a teacher out there at the Head Start, a therapeutic teacher out at Head Start. Her name is Carol Thomas, and Carol Thomas was exactly what we needed. So I watched her work with the kids a little bit. I go back to the mental health center, and Karen Utime was my supervisor at the time, and I said, "You've got a play therapist out there. What you need to do is hire her away from Head Start." So she hired her away from Head Start, and Carol started doing her stuff, and we started doing work together, and that's when I started seeing the seeds of the trouble that we're in. Now, at the same time that I started working as a therapist with the mental health center, when I was first looking for a job, I was looking through the newspaper, the Spokesman, and I couldn't find a job that looked like it fit me or anything, but all of a sudden I saw one that said Child Protection Team Coordinator. And I had no idea what that was, but it sounded like something that might be like in the social services someplace. So I called the number and I said, "What exactly does the Child Protection Team Coordinator do?" And they said, "We're not sure." And I said, "That sounds like a job for me," because I'm really not sure. So I went down. I think I must have been the only applicant because I got the job. And it was a funded job. It was a title job that you got. I think the pay for it went for 9 months to get it going, and then after that it's voluntary. But I started going out with Child Protection Service workers to see what was going on in the homes of these kids that were getting in so much trouble in school. These adolescents that were running away from home. They were on the streets. They seemed dangerous. They were those people. Now the reason that I'm here tonight was because the Spokesman Review puts on this thing for it's a book, Northwest Passages book thing, and I had done it as an author for them, and they wanted me to come back down and interview this woman named Renee Denfield. And Renee Denfield was a homeless kid, and she was on the streets of Portland back in the days when the Green River Killers was loose. And at one point in Renee's life, she got in a car with a guy, and he started driving away, and he kept driving, and she said, what's going on? Because all of those street kids knew about the Green River Killer. And she said, this has got to be him. And he would not talk, he just kept driving. And she had to jump out of a moving car to get away from whoever this guy was, and she still thinks that's who it was. But she wrote a book, and the book was about a kid on the street. And I read the book, and I thought, man, oh man, she could have been one of my clients. She could have been one of those people. And the stories that she told, the danger, the attitude that you have to take if you're going to live on the streets is not an attitude that people connect to very well. They don't like it very much. And then, of course, during the time, we've got the election going on, and so the stuff with homeless people is coming up, and everybody's looking for easy answers. The easy answer really seems to be about getting it out of sight rather than really fixing it. Now, I'm one of the stories I always loved was the super lifeguard on the river that just kept seeing bodies come floating down. People, and he'd dive in the water and he'd pull the body out and he'd save the person, and he'd look around. There's another one coming down the river, and there's another one, and he just keeps going out there and swimming out and pulling those people in. But he never goes up the river to see how the hell the bodies are getting in the river. And all of a sudden, I'm working with these families, and I'm thinking, I think I'm seeing how the bodies are getting in the river. And if we want to do something about this, we're going to have to do a whole different thing. Because about, probably 1988, 89, I'm guessing, this great program that we had going for like 8 or 9 years at the Mental Health Center and with Head Start, all of a sudden, the managed care system came in. And we had been keeping families for like 18 months if they needed it. We had aftercare, you could come back. We had it. All of a sudden, you had 6 sessions to take care of 6 generations of abuse. And then you had to beg for the next session. And it started going crazy. It just started falling apart. Well, universe is smiling on us a little bit because the Disney company paid an obscene amount of money to make a movie out of one of my books that they never made, but they paid the money. And we got a building, and we raided the mental health center for as many of the good therapists as we could find. We pared it down, and we could keep going. And any of you who've ever had any contact with Carol Thomas knows that that's where she operates. And she's been working with those kids. Well, Carol's turning 70 this year, and she keeps saying, it's about time for me to retire. And then a whole bunch of people say, no, please don't retire, because you are the go-to person. She's unimpeachable in court. She knows where these bodies are coming from. So we sat down not too long ago, and people have been trying to get her to write a book, to write her experiences. She is as bad a writer as she is good a therapist. She sucks as a writer. And if she were here, she'd say it's worse than that. Because when she starts to sit down to write, all of a sudden she becomes academic. She's one of the most creative people. If you watch Carol Thomas work with a kid, she disappears. All you see is the world of that kid through that kid's eyes. She disappears. It's creativity you can't believe. And then she tries to write it down, and oh my God. if you think I'm putting you to sleep, I could have her here. So I sat down and we started going over 35 years of broken kids. And it's stunning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where those stories come from. Like I said, the sexual abuse stuff is god-awful. But so is the rest. I remember at one point we were working with a family, and I changed names and times and all that stuff because you have to. We were working with a family, and you start to see these pieces. Like when I write stories, I can't take a therapy session, stick it in a book unless I have a really good lawyer and no ethics. But you hear one story, 5 stories, 50 stories, and the truth starts to float. And then you take that truth and you put it into your characters. Well, we start going to look for the truth. Only we're not putting it in characters. We're saying we want you to see what it looks like through the eyes of these kids. Why do they get like they get? Why do all those homeless kids? And Renee Denfield said this in real way. We just wanted to be seen. And if you can see us in a good way, in a kind way, hooray! But probably you won't. And probably we'll get your attention. Probably we'll get your attention down there on the street. The more you try to hide us, the more we're going to do whatever we have to do to be seen. And there's not a person in this room that doesn't know what that feels like. There's not a person in this room that doesn't know that it's a cool thing to be seen. And it's really a cool thing to be seen for the things that you care about in yourself. So I'm working with this little guy. I'm working with a family. Carol's working with a little guy. Long time. And this is probably 25 years ago. And this kid, his mom she's one of these moms. She's golden when she's clean and sober. And she's a white knuckle addict. She just can't get it together. And she's got a bad boyfriend. And this kid is getting treated. I mean, he's ending up in drug houses. People are getting their hands on him when they shouldn't get their hands. I mean, it's you see it on TV. You watch it all the time. She finally starts to get clean. Now, this kid, no matter what happened to him in a drug house or the abuse he saw his mom go through with this guy and all he wanted to do was get back to his mom. He didn't care. He just wanted to get back to his mom. It was one of the things that taught me how powerful family is, how powerful connection is. He wanted to get back to his mom. Doesn't matter what happens to me. Because 2 things. I want to get back to her. I want her to take care of me. I want her to belong to me. But when she's drunk or when she's on drugs, I got to take care of her. It's a 5-year-old kid. Well, that didn't work out so well. So he's in foster care. But mom gets clean. She's going to take care of him. She gets with a new guy. And he would seem a little rough to most of us, but he's going to hang in there and try to take care of this kid. And so he's in therapy with me, and he just wants to know what to do because he grew up rough, but he's doing it. And he was one of those guys that just say, if you don't, it doesn't need to make sense to me. Just tell me what to do. And I gave him my phone number so he could call me and I'd tell him what to do. Long haul truck driver. So this kid everything he does after that, he plays with trucks. He just wants trucks. Trucks. Mom gets a commercial license too, and they're going to go out. They're going to do tandem. They're going to go out, and in the summertime, kid can stay with grandma during the times when they're gone. In the summertime, he's going to go with him. He's going to get to be a trucker. His mom's going to be a trucker. His dad's going to be a trucker. And then they go off on a trip, and they never come back. They leave him. They never come back. And he's off. Doesn't even live in Spokane anymore. 5, 6 years old. Wakes up when he's 11 or 12 one day and says, I want to go see those people we used to see. Well, they have to drive about 100 miles to get to us, but he's this brilliant little guy who's gets kicked out of school about 3 times a week for bad behavior. He comes back and he comes to our new place. When we worked with him before at the mental health center, he comes to the new place, looks around. He goes by my office, and we have our names on our office, and he says, "Is that Chris Crutcher guy that writes books?" And Carol said, "Yeah, that's him." He said, "Well, I want him to write a book about me. I'm going to tell him, I don't like to write, but I'm going to tell him the story, and he's going to write it for me, and we're putting my name on it." I'm sure he'd be willing to do that. He comes in, he goes through some sessions with her. He walks around the room. He's 11 or 12 years old now. He walks around the room and he remembers toys he played with when he was 5 years old. He is just touching this connection that he had a long ways off. He's an enormous kid. He's a great big kid. He's way overweight. Goes around the place, meets the other therapists, wants to know if they keep candy in their desks. He knows where everything is. So they talk a little bit, and he says, I think we should make a loneliness building. This should be the loneliness building. He says, you guys don't know who the lonely kids are, but I know I could fill this building with lonely kids. God, it sounded like a great idea. I mean, we were looking for the marquee. So he talks about that a lot, and he talks about what happens at school, and he talks about, and he's playing, and he's drawing, and all this stuff. And at one point, he said this thing that it just scooped me out because it was so true. He said, "Sometimes I can't tell the difference between the hunger and the loneliness. So I eat, and I eat. And it still hurts. It was the loneliness." I thought, God, I know 1,000 people that is true for. I know 1,000 people that will do this awful thing to themselves because it feels like filling them up at a time when they can't get filled up any other way. And I think this is the seed. This is the kid that we need to. This is the kid that we need to do something with. This is the kid we need to see. This is the kid that we need, and that we should have done a long time ago, that we need to start putting things into his life that gave him a way to go, so that he doesn't just get despondent, that he doesn't just take off when things aren't going right at home, or when he gets thrown out of school. He's a brilliant kid, but he shouldn't be thrown out of school, but he gets thrown out of school because he just can't stand to be there and not be seen, or when he is seen, just be called fat. Well, it's story after story after story. And you start looking at these kids, and you start seeing kind of the places that they're coming from, and I think, what can we do? Because we quit funding what we were supposed to be funding to help these kids. When I started working, there was big money to take care of families. There was big money to take care of kids. The mental health center was doing really good business, and we were full, and we had therapists working all the time. And then the managed care system came in, and that got scooped out, and it got scooped out, and it got scooped out. And pretty soon, we've been going. The child protection team had been going for 32 years. We were voluntary at first. And then there was an Eli Creekmore killing over in Everett, and they all of a sudden decided that all cases that looked dangerous and had controversy in them needed to be staffed by child protection teams. And there was a boys' ranch over in Tacoma where a bunch of sexual abuse and some bad stuff came in, and every case needed a child protection team. So we had the original team, and we were running around going like crazy trying to get other teams together. And after 32 years, they disbanded because they couldn't follow simple recommendations. They didn't exist anymore. And all of a sudden, the social services had to pretend they were doing the job that they were asked to do, with caseworkers that had 32 clients on their caseload, and they were required to make a home visit with every one of those families every month. And that's weekends included, and that's a whole bunch of times. If you're a social worker, you go out to somebody's house and they're not there, and so you have to go out again and again and again, and you have to do something with all those cases on your desk. You've got to get them someplace. You've got to get them to therapy. You've got to get them to these programs, and the programs are disappearing like crazy. And then they try to privatize it, and they go to Wisconsin and they get a woman who has done a stunning failure in Wisconsin privatizing things, so why not come to Washington? So they come to Washington and they go year after year after year trying to privatize this thing, and it's going to cut therapists, pay, it's going to cut social workers' pay, they're going to have to get second jobs. I mean, it goes into the tank. And we're not going to take care of those kids. And then you start to look at the political thing, and people want to get the homeless problem taken care of. We don't have a homeless problem. We have people who are homeless who have problems. And those problems are as diverse as everybody's problems in this room. And yet we want to make it look like we've solved the homeless problem. And those kids, God, I think of two or three kids that I worked with, kids that they're just heroes. I mean, I use their voices as characters in my books over and over and over again, because they came up through that. They had to run. I ran from my home. Here's a client. I ran from my home because every time, if I stayed home, my mom's boyfriend came into my room every night. And I can't completely stay away. I'm not really homeless. I have a home. I can go back there, but that's what's going to happen. But if I don't go back there, I got a little sister. And if it's not me, it's her. And I protect her. And the system that we have, the court system that we have, that's supposed to be protecting kids, looks at parents' rights first. Let's send this kid back. It looks like she's off drugs for a while. Let's send this kid back. Parents have rights. Parents have rights. Parents have rights. There are a lot of times when you're going to do, you will do, and I know this from being a therapist, I know it from working in social services, I know it from doing the child protection team. I know that the power of family is really, really, really powerful. It's magnetic as hell. But you can get connected to a snake. So you got to know when to quit. You got to know when it's not going to work. We got a kid. If you want a kid and you don't want him to have attachment problems, you got to get to him in the first year and a half, 2 years. If you don't get to him, he's going to have those problems. He has the capacity to attach. If he doesn't get his mom, he still has the capacity to attach to a foster parent. He has the capacity, and then it goes away. So here we come. How come every high school kid doesn't know this? How come every high school kid doesn't know this? How come every high school kid doesn't take parenting classes the same way they take English classes? Because they're going to be parents, and they're going to say, they're going to say things like I used to hear all the time. You know, my dad beat my ass, and I guess I turned out all right. I'm in a child abuse group. You didn't turn out all right. It's a child abuse group. The two places I ever heard spare the rod and spoil the child are church and child abuse groups. So we need to get smart about this. And the other thing we need to do, I think, from a political point of view, is we need to get people in politics who have the imagination to put their kids in the role of a kid that they don't know. When they hear that thing that happened, they need to say, what would I do if that were my child? You know, out of Freeman, little Sam, who ended up being a hero out there, sort of, for stopping the shooter Caleb from loading that AR-15. He wasn't feeling heroic. He saw him start to go for that gun, and he didn't know not to go tell him not to do that because he would get in trouble. And so the kid drops the AR, but he has a pistol, and he shoots Sam and kills him. we had a person, we have somebody who represents us who also has a special needs child. And his special need, when the gunman comes to his school, is going to be help. A chance to run. But I want somebody with the imagination that can say, what happens when that gunman... When I went to Stoneman Douglas 2 months after that shooting, voluntarily, I just said, I got to do something. And I knew the librarian there. There was a girl there who pulled her dead boyfriend over her and didn't breathe and just said, I hope it's quick. I want politicians who can think, God, if that were my daughter, I'd go crazy. He'd be my stepson if I were traditional, or if Carol were traditional. Lives in Connecticut. He could drive to Newtown in 25 minutes. And he has a daughter who would have been the age of the first and second graders when that shooting happened. If it had been a different school, she's one of those kids. And I think what we need, we need to have people who can understand the pain that parents feel, the pain that kids feel when these things happen. And you look at these kids. We were just going through some Carol and I were going through some things that we were looking to kind of put into story form. We were just going through some kids' utterances. And here's a little guy, and he's like 5. I guess he's 5.5. He lived with his mom and dad for the first 4 years. He gets pulled away. There's drug abuse. He's not getting beaten, but there's domestic violence all over the place. He's seeing it all the time, and mom and dad won't stop using drugs. He gets pulled away. He goes off to live in foster care. They get clean. They have another baby. They get to keep the other baby. He's sitting around looking, how come? Not me. And here's what he says. He says, there's nothing that'll change me. I'll never be happy. My choice. I'm choosing to be mad. Evil is the one thing that will never change, and I'm evil. The good's inside my brother, because he was wanted. Evil is good for me. It helps me protect my heart. If you believed that, how would you act? If you had a kid who believed that, how would you act? That's where the bodies are coming into the water. That's where the bodies are coming in upstream. Here's a picture. This is my mom. She's a glass mom. I want to turn her into metal so she won't break when my dad hits her. Look at what those kids, look at the survival. Look what they do with their imaginations. Look what they try to make happen for themselves. And look how hard it is. And look what happens to us when we see those kids get out there and they act in a way that we don't want to run into. We see them on the street and we don't look at them. Dr. Renee Denfield, I was working with another woman. I was at the National English Teachers Conference, and there's a woman there. She was a teacher and she was a writer. She grew up the same way Renee Denfield did, and she just said, and she is just tough as nails. And she just said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you see me or I'll make you see me." And she made it. She's a teacher. She's out there. I mean, she's got books. She's got her name on a book. And she goes back there and says, look at all the kids who didn't get their names on books. Look at all the kids who have to see, who have to do that. Now, I don't have a lot of solutions. But one of the solutions, one of the things that I did see in this community, and I'll open up for questions right in a minute. I'd been working on the child protection team for probably 8 years. There was a fabulous, in fact, he was the guy who started, a guy named D. Wilson, who works for the University of Washington now and talks a lot about child abuse and neglect. And D and I were, he was the person that decided that I should that I should coordinate and run the child protection team. And we got a call one day from a guy named Bill Bielkowski. You might know Bill. And he was just blown away by the Vanessa Bean killing. And he said, we got to do something in this community that doesn't have anything to do with government, that doesn't have anything to do with politicians, that doesn't have anything to do with funding it. To have a place where people can take their kids when it's just, they have to take them someplace or they're going to hurt them. They have to take them someplace so they can get something done. And man, he went out and did it. He did it. The Vanessa Bean Nursery just got a brand new spot. They're bigger. They take in, they have clients coming all the time. They have volunteers working there. They do wonderful, and it's community based because one guy said, I can't stand it for one more kid to get killed. And that's what it took. About 11 years ago, and I will open it up for questions, the thing that I think this brought it home. While I was running the child protection team, there was a time when if a child was killed in care when they were a part of the system, there had to be an outside group that would kind of go back and see what had happened to this kid. Could we have stopped it? And because I was the chairperson for the child protection team, I ended up being the chairperson for a lot of those death reviews. And man, they are hard to do because you have to just go back and see everything that happened, get anybody who was involved with it one way or the other to talk to you and get it done. And this was a particularly bad one because the social worker made a bad call. And it didn't make it alone, but it looked like the mom was the most, there were two teenage parents, looked like the mom was the least functional. So dad was he was the caretaker. And he ended up killing the kid. Well, what happened was we went through all this stuff and the grandparents came in and it was just a really, really long, ugly day. And the thing that would happen in these death reviews at the end of the day, the coroner would come. And the coroner always had pictures. And for some reason, because I knew how, I have insulation, I know how to compartmentalize, but he came in and one of the pictures was this baby, 6 months old, right before the autopsy, lying on a steel slab, stainless steel slab. And it just looked cold. And it's one of the first times I said I had to go to the restroom. So I went in the restroom and hyperventilated for a while and came back and we did it. Probably 20 years later, Carol's oldest son, Justin had just had a baby. He's teaching at the University of Michigan at the time. We're in Ann Arbor. They get to see the baby. The baby's 3 or 4 days old, 5 days old. Justin he was an inside linebacker for the University of Washington back in the 90s. He's huge. He's like, 6'6" and probably weighs 280. He was getting ready to go to teach his class. He's lying on this great big bed. And he was just in a circle. And he was in the middle. And he was just getting ready to go, and I walked up there. And I just wanted to, I was just going to say bye to him. And this probably wasn't true, but I looked, and it looked like she was in the same exact position as that baby on the slab. And I did what I'm doing right now. Tears start going. I had to leave. And he thought I was leaving because, the beauty of birth. But I was leaving because every chance, no chance. Every chance, no chance. That's the thing that we have to do as citizens of a civil society. Is we have to figure out ways to at least give everybody a little chance. So I ran over the time I was talking, and we're supposed to open for questions or comments or anything. And we have Donahue is going to come through.
Are the mics
There you go.
hearing now? So we're going to open it up. First of all, let's give Chris a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now we're going to open it up for questions, and I'll be on this side, and Jamie will be on that side. So if you have a question, if you come down, we'll bring the mic to you. Just a couple of quick ground rules. One question at a time so that everybody has a chance to ask a question. And also, please use questions. If you need to make a statement to frame a question or put a question in context, that's fine. Just kind of keep it short. What we're trying to avoid is a second speech. Okay? So if that's fair. So we'll start on either side. We're going to alternate one side, then the other, and hopefully everybody will get their questions answered. So who has a question?
Well, I'm a retired elementary school counselor from Mountain Provinces, and I worked on a couple of Indian reservations at school for emotionally disturbed Lincoln boys, so familiar with a lot of the stories you're telling here tonight. But just a local level, I mean, just a city program, where would you suggest that we begin? Or can we? Is it more of a state problem, or is there stuff that the city itself can do?
You know, that's a really good question. Where do we start? What goes on? Number one, thank you for for your career, because I'll tell you what, some really bad stuff has to happen to you to go get to see me when I'm a therapist. Every kid has a teacher. And every kid goes to a school to find that one person who can see them. And I think that's one of the places we have to start. You know, teachers, I've heard teachers say this back in the day, and they seldom say it anymore. But it was like, I got into this to be a teacher. You know, I didn't get into it to be a social worker. I didn't get into it to be a therapist. Yeah, well, too bad, because you are. You know, think of the number of kids, and you know this, think of the number of kids who hate Christmas vacation because they just have to be home. Every kid, we have to go there, I think. We have to go there. And number one, we have to jack up the pay, and we have to jack up the esteem that we have as a society for educators. I mean, we have to blow that way up, because every kid finds that teacher. When I was a therapist, first day when I'm just sitting there asking questions, trying to get something going, say, what's your favorite class? They never gave me their favorite class. Always gave me their favorite teacher. So I think that's where we start. I mean, I think the politics of education, what we do in terms of the money that we put into it, the resources that we put into it, all of those things, and we have to be. I think we have to go to institutions where teachers are created. I mean, higher ed, and really pay good attention to the kind of people that we put in the classroom. Because anybody who's been in education knows, I know teachers that would they would die for their kids. And I know teachers who don't give a damn. And I want a whole bunch of people who would die for their kids. So I think that's one place. I think I would love to see it. I would love to see us. I don't want to take, if I'm talking in like 45 minutes to an hour and I tell all the really tough stories, I don't want everybody to have to listen to all those stories all the time. But what I do want is I want a civilized culture that just doesn't want those things to happen. It just wants to raise the bottom up. Just keep raising the bottom up. Tie those people who don't have any resources, tie those people who don't have any, to anything good, anything that can make me feel like I matter. And we've heard it. I heard it as a kid. Damn kids today. Damn kids today. That should be the national anthem, right? It is damn kids today, because they aren't like us. Yes, they are. We just forgot, and they're fighting against different things. But we have to get to this place, like Bill Balkowski. I don't want any more kids to get killed. That brings the bottom up a little bit. That does bring the bottom up a little bit. A whole bunch of people take their kids to Vanessa now. think what could happen if you took the resources of people that really had the dough and really just didn't want people to hurt and got creative. You got to be creative. You can't look at one person who wants to live on welfare and say everybody who wants to live on welfare, everybody living on welfare wants to live on welfare. I've been in that business for a long time. Not very many people want to live on welfare. And if you're living on welfare, it's no damn fun. It's not very much money. So there are a whole bunch of people saying, what I want to do is grow up and scam the system. That's not what's going on. It happens, but it's a byproduct. Every one of those people wants to be valuable. Every one of us wants to be valuable. So what we need is the creativity among, and I think it happens in this, the more local it is. I grew up in Cascade, Idaho. Politics of that town is off the charts mean. Nobody starved in Cascade, Idaho. It got to be 40 below. Nobody froze to death in Cascade, Idaho, because you knew the guy. You wouldn't let somebody even if you don't let them starve, and you don't let them freeze. So local is good. Local is, I want to be able to. If I live close to Newtown, Connecticut, I'm a lot more capable of seeing what's going on with people, with guns and things like that. So that, I think it has to happen in those places. Local is better. But the government has, it's like it has to be, I think it has to be part of the national consciousness. Kindness has to be part of our consciousness. And if not that, just avert awfulness. I'll start there. So, long answer. You got to know I'm seriously ADD. I have no idea where on that little set of notes that I got.
Thank you so much, Chris, for everything you've shared. I'm curious if you can give us some understanding about when did we start missing the mark as far as when Head Start was created with the intent of trying to reach some of our low-income kids. Do you know, was that in the 60s or 70s?
When I was, the program Head Start, probably 60s.
Was it part of this, Chris?
I think it was. And I remember at one point there was a Head Start program in my hometown in Cascade, and I took a job one summer, and I think I was in college, of taking kids up to get exams and things like that. And then for me personally, there were a couple things happened. I grew up in a really small town. My graduating class was like 15. We had 5 girls and 10 boys, and left the boys in serious social retardation well into our 30s, because even the 5 girls didn't want to go out with us. But everybody in town, I used to joke about Cascade. You had 943 people and 13 last names. But a lot of people knew each other in Cascade. And one of the things about a little town like that is, we didn't even have a movie theater. Sports was everything. And the guys who played sports, and it was guys because it was like the 60s, there were no girls' sports. The guys who played sports got way more chances in the office than those other kids did. But I worked in my dad's service station. And my dad had a deal that we were going to be open 1 hour later than any other business in town. So when the other guy was the Chevron station, we were Phillips 66. When the Chevron light went off, we stayed open 1 more hour. For an hour a night, and especially in the summertime, there was only one place to go in Cascade, Idaho, and it was my service station. And a whole bunch of kids that I never would have been around, that I never would have known anything about, would come down and just start talking. And I started to realize how different their lives were than mine. And they were kids that everybody didn't like. They were kids that lived up in they didn't have money. And they were kids that the teachers didn't like. And I started early on, and I didn't even know what it was, but I thought, man, something's wrong. And then for my life, it just cascaded. The next thing I know, I'm down in Oakland. And I'm I'm seeing these kids. I this 4.5-year-old girl took 2 city buses by herself to get to this school. It's 4.5. And we run down, because the bus stop's 2 blocks away. And we run down to get her. And we didn't know what else to do. And she got there every day. But she started seeing this other side. And then, God, you get into child abuse and neglect. You're seeing it all the time.
I guess what I'm trying to think is that it seems like there just isn't really enough intent, that we have this desire to improve things, but there doesn't seem to be much deliberate political will. And when I have exchange students, I'm a high school teacher, and I have exchange students every year from other countries, from Portugal, from Belgium, Denmark, Thailand, and they sit with a quizzical look on their faces. And,
Yes, they do.
And they, like the girl that I have from Germany right now, she sits and she goes, how is America like this? How are you like this? And so when I sit and listen to you, and I'm thinking, I totally agree that we should have that there should be parenting and childhood development required classes, because I just go, how do we end up with so many dysfunctional parents? But I just wondered if you just had some insight on how do we try to get to be kinder and to be more concerned and be willing to put the money in our younger kids.
To some degree, I think it has to do, and I don't know how we got away from it. There's a guy, and there's another outfit that was trying to make a movie out of one of my books, and the director was from Finland. And he said all the same things. How in the world, how does your education work? How does it work like, you know what we do? And you go, no, please tell me what, and he did, and they don't do, Finland's got these amazing scores, they're doing real well. Because, and maybe it's because they're smaller, but we have to get a national, it feels to me like we have to get a national, there's this 100th monkey thing. We have to have enough people thinking that we just can't tolerate that kind of pain in people's lives. And we can't tolerate a 5-year-old kid trying to figure out how to get to the next day. I watched this little guy doing a thing not long ago, and it was like, he'd been in and out of foster care. He had like 9 or 10 foster care placements, and he's like 6, right? He's been all over the place. And when he starts playing, he can't find a, and he's in the playroom, and he can't find a mom, and he keeps putting things together, and the mom does something wrong, and she does something wrong. Pretty soon he finds a bus, he makes up a bus driver. And the bus driver lets him, I'll let you on this bus for 15 days. You can't live here, but you can live here for 15 days, and we'll see if we can find you a mom. And they get to the end of the 15 days, which is really just the end of the session. Oops, no mom, get off my bus. We can't, you can't have 5-year-old. We just can't allow that to be true. That's what we have to say. Would I let my granddaughter? Would I let my own kid? Would I let? Can I put a real face to the pain of those kids that just skate below the radar all day long? We can't decide we want to not see them. We can't decide, and I get it, I know if you're a merchant, you don't want it to look dangerous outside your place. But if we don't want those kids on the street or any of the homeless people on the street wanting to be seen, we got to put them someplace where they can be safe and we can see them. And that has to be, it's like, one of the things that I love about being a writer is the number of emails and letters and things that I've gotten where somebody said, I thought Sarah Burns could be my friend. Or I thought Moby, I would love to have a friend like Moby. Or I want to be. It's through story. It's through imagination. Imagination. we've taken imagination out of politics. We want people in politics who can imagine things. And we have to be, as the people who are voting for them, we have to just keep that imaginative thing going and going and going. We have to tell stories. We have to tell our own stories. We've got to tell the truth about ourselves. We have to accept that, how imperfect we are as human beings. Because somewhere out there we have to elevate these kids. Because if we don't, I remember sitting, I was working with a family with Carol a long time ago. We walked out of this thing and it was just I won't even go into it. And we walked out of there and the kid she was working with was like 4.5 years old. And she said, he's going to hurt somebody someday. And I walked away thinking, he is, and we can't stop it. 4.5. When I started working at Head Start, I started looking at 5-year-olds as old. They were locked at 5. So we got to go into developmental stuff. We got to start loving babies like crazy. And making sure that we educate ourselves about what we have to do to those babies, because a whole bunch of stuff happens before you ever have a language, and you deal with it the rest of your life. So, again, another ADD answer.
Chris, we have a question over here. Chris, I'm going to take a little academic liberty here, give you a break from talking, and try to frame this, hopefully, in a solution. I, too, have that degree that says Eastern Washington State College. Worked for Department of Social and Health Services, retired 2012, working with public assistance. Okay? And adjunct instructor in political science and government at community college in some classes here. And since retiring, volunteering, reading to first graders 2 or 3 times a week. And I've heard these stories, okay? And one of the things that I think needs to happen, and I talked a lot about how people vote. And unfortunately, most voters do not understand the ramifications of their vote. That they have to think about, if I vote something down or cut dollars, what is going to be the long-term effect of my community? Okay? So the first thing that has to happen is voters have to be smarter and more informed in what the ramifications are. Secondly, with my 22 years, I've come to the conclusion we need a different paradigm, because government cannot fix this problem. It can be part of the solution, but for 40 or 50 years, since the 60s, we've been trying to get government to fix the problem, and it hasn't worked. We have become reactionary, whether it comes to counseling, therapeutic work, rather than proactive. Now, all these things need to be taken care of. There's kids that need help. You said 2 things tonight are the key. One is, what are the seeds? Where are the seeds that are being planted to create this? And the second thing is, how powerful families are. And we really have to look at digging the seeds out to avoid adding more kids to the streets and being more proactive in building up families by starting in grade school and teaching how to relate to each other, parenting skills, things like that. Because if we don't make a paradigm shift, our grandkids will be sitting in this room 40 years from now talking about the same thing. So, thank you for the presentation.
And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with you, because there's only so much. The government can do some things, but you're so right. I mean, I went to a school not too long ago, and I guess they do this around here in some places. This was creepy. They have a no touching policy in the school, and it's like no touching. So when kids, if they can't hold hands, And if they're going to hug, it's an air hug. Now that's just creepy. And but the whole deal was they were so afraid of having some kid there that's been sexually active in some way ahead of the time that they should be, that they're doing safety before they do what's real. And all of a sudden, I heard a kid in an institution not too long ago say they won't hug us good night in the place that they were, and I think that's the reason that I thought of that was when you said we have to think about what our vote does. We have to think about what our ideas are going to do. I always want to look at things, and this helped me a lot when I was working with Carol. I wanted to see if I need to see the world through the kids' eyes. When I came out of college, and I taught for a while, but when I got into that and started out being a therapist, I thought did I want to help people, and boy, did they not want the kind of help I thought I wanted to give them. And the reason they didn't want the help that I wanted to give them is because it wasn't good help. Because I wasn't looking at the world through their eyes. If I could see the world through their eyes, man, I learned to take baby steps. And I learned to shut the hell up. You probably don't think that from listening to me tonight. But I learned to shut the hell up and look at the world through your eyes, because we have to get to a place that you can get. And I totally agree that we have to get smart. That because our vote means something and our ideas mean something. What is this going to look like? Okay, I have this great idea. How is it going to land? Like, I don't know if I've written a good book until I get some letters. I might have wrote it. It might be crap until somebody tells me it. I need somebody to tell me what I wrote. I want to know if I connected with people. That's the same thing with any idea that any of us have. Teachers 10 times that much.
We got a question up here.
Were you guys the politically incorrect savages?
Yes. Who in Spokane County is doing a good job helping 18 to 24-year-olds who have graduated from the foster care system? Our sheriff said to me just last month, he said, one of the major problems we have in Spokane County is from foster care to jail. What's the best incentive dealing with these people getting into regular stuff?
What's the best thing? Are you asking what's the best thing that we have, or what can we do?
Who is doing a good job? That was my first thing, because we've got people who really need help. And then, what's the best incentive to get them out of jail and onto doing something productive in society?
That's a really good question, which means it's one I can't answer. I don't know who's doing a really good job. That transition time, and one of the things that they're doing now is they're allowing, if kids getting out of foster care, when they foster out, when they turn 18, they're programs now that if they go to college and things like that, they can stretch it out. And I don't know, I can't name that program, but I know it exists. So we have to keep going, because if we don't do that, then whatever the support thing is for those kids is gone, and they don't have, okay, I made it of age now, and I can vote, I can go into the service or whatever that, I can go to jail, but I need guidance, and I don't know a lot. Hopefully maybe somebody else in the room knows where those kids can go for help, because that's a place where you can get elevated to a certain thing and then just drop into the abyss. Because if all of a sudden my support thing is taken out from under me, there's always gravity, and gravity never fails. So I don't know who's doing a good job of that, but that's a scary time. And boy, kid after kid after kid says that exact same thing. What am I going to do when all of a sudden the state, my foster parents aren't going to, there's no funding for me anymore. Nobody's going to pay for me to have things.
One place in Spokane County is Teen Child, and do you know about them? Yeah, and they give legal assistance to kids about the age that you're talking about, but they also try to place that, and I volunteered there for a little while, where I think they're doing a good job.
Say the name of it again.
Team Child.
Thank you. Teen Child. Great.
Out on the table when you came in tonight, there was a handout with a list of organizations that work on these issues. And I don't know if there's still some out there, but you're welcome to grab them on your way out. Any other questions? Jimmy?
I'm really concerned about a lack of safety net for kids. I'm a special ed teacher at Rogers. All my kids are kids of trauma, abuse, neglect, poverty. Okay, my kids are also kindergarten, second grade academic level. Okay, apparently every kid now is going to a four-year university, so we don't need to do any vocational training. And we especially don't need to do any low-level vocational training. So my kids are not employable.
Yep.
Okay, apparently the current administration is going to cut 100,000 kids off for free and reduce hot lunch. He apparently now is going to do, like, if you got a disability, you got to fill out 85 pages of paperwork to get any money. My parents cannot fill out 1 page of paperwork, let alone 85. Then apparently if you don't work, you can't get any food stamps. Well, my kids are not employable. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. And one of my kids just got cut off of SSI. His girlfriend's pregnant. He's not employable. What in the hell is going to happen to these kids?
Well, the scary part is that, we can go down the road another 20 years and somebody else will be up talking about those kids in that same position. To me, it's that number one, you talk about shifting paradigm. We do have to shift the paradigm. We have to shift the paradigm to say, not everybody needs a 4-year education. I mean, and not everybody, I'm still waiting to use algebra. It could happen anytime. But, so, I think we can, tailor make things. And now things really are getting more and more specific. And if you look into you look at the tech people, you look at the Bill Gates and the jobs and everything, they don't tell you what university they graduated from. They tell you what university they dropped out of so that they can go do what they wanted to do. So I think there's a piece there where we have to say, there's got to be a place for everybody. There has to be a place for everybody. And I think as a culture, one of the things we have to do is stop worrying about getting tricked. I was walking to this really nice restaurant with a whole bunch of people. There were some teachers and librarians in Fort Worth, Texas, and their husbands came. They were all women, and their husbands came, and they were business people. And we were walking toward this restaurant, and this guy came running across the street, and he said, "God, is there any way you can help me out? I need $17 and some odd cents. I just over at the grocery store." And he said, "My kids are in the car, da 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 da." So I gave him my wallet, and I give him $20, and he says he's going to bring me the change. I said, "You keep the change." He runs away, and the women are there going, the guys are going, "How do you know that's what he was going to do with the money?" And now I'm going to talk a little bit about like one of my characters in one of my books, because I said, who gives a shit? Whatever his story is. I've been here for 2 days. You guys are paying me $2,000 a day, and I haven't bought a beer since I got here because you give me food, you put me up in a really nice hotel and stuff like that. I think I can afford to get tricked. We need to go ahead and be willing to be tricked, because not that many people are out there trying to trick us. A whole bunch of people are out there trying to get a little bit of help. And that's where we have to get. We have to look at those kids and say, okay, some of those kids they're gonna blow that safety net. They're gonna burn the net and fall through it. Some of them aren't. And I go back right now, and I have like 4 or 5 kids that I still see. They're kids, yeah. Like I'm 73, and they're in their 50s. And I thought, and the 4 that I'm thinking of, I never thought they'd be 20. I never thought they'd be 20. But they are. And every one of them is doing something cool. And I didn't know who they were. And there were some people out there I thought were going to make it, didn't. But if you just put as much out there as you can and don't worry about being tricked, We're human beings. That should be the other national anthem. We get tricked. Let ourselves get tricked. Let ourselves make sure that we try to take care of the, it's religious. It's the least of our brethren, right? So, and hooray. I mean, you're out there. I love that you're out there worrying about that. I love that you're out there worrying about that. It'll keep you awake.
The amount of money I spend out of my own pocket for you don't have a pair of shoes.
Yes.
And it's kind of cool. Blue State Road Runners Club has a race. It's called the Recycle Run. And you bring your old shorts and your old shoes and stuff. We were going to send them to Africa. And I'm looking at that stuff. I said, bullshit. I'm taking that to Rogers. If you got shoes that are duct tape, and runners never run their shoes out. So if you got shoes that are duct tape, a shoe with 100 miles on it is fantastic. They get New York Marathon t-shirts. They get shorts. They get, I bring sacks full of shoes to school every day, and if the cross-country runners aren't, the rest of the kids at the school are getting the free stuff. And there was a girl one time at Meade that collected everybody's homecoming and prom dresses, because Meade girls only wear them once. And she would bring them to Rogers, and the kids would wear it and bring it back, And so there are some really great people out there that will do stuff if you can just connect with them.
And if we elevate that behavior, we need to say it over and over again in every venue that we get in. Because, I can sit here and you work in this business, all that kind of stuff, and you can want the thing that you want you want everybody to know it. But everybody's not going to know that every day. You can't. People have lives. People are out there doing their stuff. But if we can get to that place where we welcome kindness, we welcome almost any kid if you can get a kid that's having a really horrible time, depressed like crazy, all of those kinds of things, if you can get them in a situation where they can help somebody. I used to send those Lakeside kids at the school in Oakland. I would send some of the toughest kids in the world down to the elementary school. It's like, got Ramel Tapscott down in the elementary schools. In the second grade, he's got this god-awful cleft palate. His face is swollen up. He gets teased all the time. He's got tubes in his ears. Kids tease him. They're just giving him all the time. I want you to go down there and take care of Ramel. The kid I sent down there is he's the toughest kid in our school. Boy, 2 days later, there was a Ramel Tapscott rule. And the Ramel Tapscott rule was, you mess with Ramel, you're messing with me. And nobody messed with Ramel. And he came back, and he, on a daily basis, would come back and tell me some cool thing that Ramel did. And I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, that's a really cool thing from Ramel. That's a really cool thing for you. Because look how good you feel making sure that Ramel Tapscott doesn't get, bullied anymore.
One thing that's really cool at Rogers, every year we're the school that donates the most blood. Now,
and that's not from nosebleeds.
It doesn't cost anything. Now, they used to do a food drive, but they discovered the kids were going to the food bank to get the food to donate to the food bank. So we don't do that anymore. But we donate more blood because our kids know what it's like not to have something.
Right.
And it doesn't cost them anything. They get a free donut. And so, so our kids, we got great kids there. They just don't have a fair chance.
Yep. And you guys are getting some really good programs going on up there, too.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate your participation. And I just want to say thanks again to our speaker, Chris Crutcher. Wasn't he great?
Thank you. And I want to say, isn't it great that there's this group that's way greater than Chris Crutcher? So thanks for having me, and thanks for being a group. Thank you.